Chairman. Thank you, Director Young, for your time today. Really appreciate you testifying in front of the Budget Committee today. I want to talk about two issues that really hit close to home for my constituents. First, energy prices, and second, water, and how the President plans to address these issues in the fiscal year 2024 budget. The President has called on domestic oil and gas industry to produce more energy, but the President's fiscal year 24 budget removes tax deductions on small independent oil and natural gas producers. These producers account for over 90% of the wells in the U.S. and produce over 80% of America's oil and 90% of America's natural gas. These local producers are ramping up production to meet our pressing energy needs, while creating high-paying jobs and generating critical revenue that support our local public services in California's Central Valley. The President's budget proposes to end some of the tax deductions that many of these independent producers use to maintain depleted wells and invest in exploration for oil and gas. These are no different from standard deductions a business takes for the depreciating value or of equipment or investments in research and development. Do you think it's contradictory for President Biden to call on oil and gas companies to increase production while at the same time his budget eliminates the tax deductions and burdens domestic energy producers with significant tax increases?
Congressman, I'll point out that domestic production is about 1 million barrels per day greater than it was in January 2021. So we continue to see robust energy production in this country. And as you know, the debate about what loopholes to close, what taxes, is countered with what spending to cut. So we have a choice if we want to get our long-term fiscal house in order.
So what policies is in the President's budget will encourage oil and gas exploration and spur investment in increased supply?
I'll just point out again, we see over 1 million barrels a day more than when the President took office. We see refinery up more than 28% than 2 years ago. So his policies are not getting in the way of production. We're seeing increased production and refinery.
We're actually seeing a decrease in production in the Central Valley. We're not seeing as much investment. We've seen it to the point where local communities have actually had to increase sales tax to make up for the difference in losses of revenues because of the number of jobs that were created, the number of investments that were made, the amount of equipment was purchased, the amount of even local revenue to the local businesses, to the point where they've actually had to raise revenue through sales tax to make up for the losses because of the lack of permitting approved of. And some of that is state and some of that's federal. Sadly, we're fighting it from both sides in California. And I know that the tax credits are something that the administration doesn't support, but in the previous comments from my colleague from Texas, tax credits were mentioned as one of the ways that you would increase housing by giving tax credits to people to build more. And I would say the same thing would work for oil. And if you take away those tax credits, you're going to have the opposite effect of what you're going to do for housing. Now on to water. My district in the Central Valley is one of the many across western U.S. that has struggled with severe drought in recent years. While the last few months have brought much needed rainfall to our state, we do not have enough water storage to capture and store this critical resource. Drought will be back before we know it, and the people in my community will once again be asking why we couldn't hold on to more of the rain we've seen in the recent months. And the reason I bring this up is Sites Reservoir is a reservoir in Northern California that we've been talking about in California for 60 years, so longer than my life, obviously, and a lot of people in this room, and we can't get those permits approved. Lake Success, a reservoir not far from me that is overflowing as we speak because of all this rainfall, it took 30 years. I was probably still in high school when they started talking about this, just for them to be able to expand an existing reservoir 10 feet to be able to hold some of this water. And so when we look at the situation where I've now got neighbors sending me pictures as they're evacuating their houses, they're evacuating their farms. One neighbor only a mile from my house, a couple miles from my house, is actually moving his cows off of his farm as we speak. And so we're losing all this water out into the ocean. We're losing it into people's farms, people's homes. We're not able to capture this water because of the permitting. This administration is something, and I know this isn't directly under OMB, but it is something that needs to be addressed, and I would hope that the President understand the value of that water that we're wasting today, because that would help us create jobs for years to come, because we would be able to farm ground instead of the situation where we had over the last year or two where we weren't able to farm a lot of our ground because of the lack of water. So what policies in the President's budget support water storage, and what is the administration doing to ensure regulatory red tape is removed so that these critical storage projects can be constructed as soon as possible.
So I spoke about this earlier, and I know we're short on time, but one, I think there is room here in a bipartisan way to work on permitting. Both sides have plans. Both sides have said they want to do something about it. We have to sit down and do something about it. OMB has a small piece of guidance we put out to try to help streamline, but it's going to take congressional action to do something further, and you've heard the president talk about this. So I hope the room opens to be able to have fulsome conversations that result in changes there. We do, with bill resources, bipartisan infrastructure law, put some funding in the West towards drought. And we are not taking it for granted that the rain will not continue forever, and we've got to find long-term solutions. Water Smart is one of the things we're doing, but we know it's too little, and we've got to figure out something. 40 million people, I know more than half are in California who are dealing with the Colorado River situation alone. So you have my commitment to work on long-term drought solutions in the West.
Just one thing to note, in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, one of the reasons why I was very much in opposition to it was because it specifically was drafted in a way that would prevent one of our most affordable projects from being expanded, which is Shasta Reservoir. And why they would do that in a piece of legislation. I mean, if you're looking to save money and invest, that would be one way. And in California, it's always interesting. If they want to build high-speed rail or they want to build a football stadium in LA or San Francisco, environmental regulations almost don't even exist to them. But we talk about a reservoir for 60 years and can't break ground on it.
The gentleman's time has
So,
expired.
thank you.
Very important issue for the West and the Southwest.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications so every time I put out a video, you can know about it. It'll come up in your feed. Hit that like button if you liked it. And be positive. Peace.